Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for October 2nd of 2023, and currently we have two main regions for severe thunderstorm development. We do have two slight risks. We have a slight risk for eastern New Mexico into parts of western Texas, as well as a slight risk for parts of western Nebraska into southwestern South Dakota, as well as a marginal threat that does extend the entirety of the high plains all the way from western Texas into Mexico, as far north as central North Dakota into Canada. As for threats for today, we do have a 5% tornado threat for the slight risk region for the southern high plains, and as for our wind threat, we do have two different areas of 5% wind threat. One for both slight risk as well as a very large 5% for the entire marginal threat. As for our hail threat, we do have a 15% with the possibility of large to very large hail for the southern slight risk in the high plains, with the 5% that does extend into the rest of the marginal and other slight risk. As for the southern slight risk in the high plains, this 5% tornado threat, 5% wind threat, and 5% hail threat with the possibility of large to very large hail is going to be enough to trigger a slight risk region on their own. However, we are expected to see a little bit more of a threat for hail, as we do have that hatched region, but we are going to be looking out for the threat of a few tornadoes, of damaging winds, and the threat of large to very large hail. And as for the northern slight risk, we are seeing mainly the threat of damaging winds with the secondary hail threat, and not all that much of a tornado threat. Taking a look at our weather models, focusing on the entire slight risk for the high plains, you can see that we do have the trough advection that we've been tracking the last couple of days. It has trekked a little bit further off to the east compared to yesterday, when we weren't really seeing all that much of a direct impact from this trough. It was a little bit more situated further out to the west. We were seeing a little bit more indirect impacts from the trough. It was more so out to the west. However, as its progression eastward, you can see that we do have a little bit more of some direct impacts from this trough, and we should continue to see this trek eastward. And you can see that it is a fairly large trough, mainly for the south, where we have more so of that base of the trough, and we don't really have the zonal flow of the rest of the trough. Where we have the winds surrounding the base of the trough, we could see some advection across the Rocky Mountains into New Mexico and western Texas, with some lee troughing, which is going to aid with our entire severe weather threat. We could see a little bit more of some directional shear further down south, because we have more of the base of the trough and more veering the winds towards the south. So we could see some directional shear to support the threat of a few tornadoes with that 5% tornado threat. And for the entire slight risk, or entire marginal threat and slight risks, we are expected to see some lee troughing on the leeward side of the Rocky Mountains for the entire high plains, as this trough is fairly large, and it is expected to impact and advect across pretty much the entirety of the Rockies, into the leeward side of the entirety of the Rockies. The lee troughing on the leeward side of the Rocky Mountains is going to help focus severe thunderstorm development to the entire high plains, all the way from Mexico into Canada. With a little bit more of a threat further down south, where we have stronger winds rounding the base and more advection into the southern high plains, as well as a little bit of some advection further out to the east across the northern high plains. You can see that we do have some fairly zonal flow across between the slight risk regions. You can see that we do have some fairly zonal flow, and then by the time it does reach the northern slight risk, it does advect more so off to the east. So that is going to be leading to a little bit more lee troughing towards the slight risk compared to the rest of the marginal threat. So that is going to lead to our separate regions for severe thunderstorm development. However, with the Rocky Mountains off to the west, we could definitely see some orographic elongated hodographs, as a lot of the lower level winds are blocked by the Rocky Mountains. However, the mid-level and upper level winds are still able to get across the Rocky Mountains, which not only leads to lee troughing, but it also leads to elongated hodographs to support the threat of hail for the entire marginal threat in both the slight risks. But again, where we have those stronger winds further down south, and a little bit more stronger winds surrounding the base of the trough. We could see a little bit stronger elongated photographs to support more of a large hail threat, but we could definitely see some small to medium hail for the entire marginal threat. Again, as well as a threat of 1 or 2 brief tornadoes and a few tornadoes with that 5% tornado threat. But overall, our main threats coming out of this should be the threat of damaging winds, large to very large hail further down south, and the threat of a few tornadoes further down south, and further up north we could see more of a damaging wind threat with an additional hail threat. Taking a look at our dew points, focusing on the southern slight risk first, you can see that we do have quite a bit of moisture in the atmosphere across eastern New Mexico into western Texas. Some of the rain showers that we've had across eastern New Mexico is going to help build moisture in the atmosphere across eastern New Mexico, as well as some of the aid with the southeasterly flow out of the Gulf of Mexico, which is going to help with building moisture across eastern New Mexico. This should lead to quite a bit of instability across eastern New Mexico, but if we go to the northern slight risk, you can see that we don't really have the strong moisture that we are expected to see across eastern New Mexico for Nebraska. We do have much weaker moisture. We are expected to see dew points are going to be more so in the upper 40s into the low and mid 50s, but this should lead to enough instability to help with us to fuel severe thunderstorms. However, overall it should be significantly less compared to New Mexico. And you can see for the entire marginal threat, we are expected to have quite a bit of moisture towards the break between our different slight risks. We do have significantly less moisture, so that is going to lead to a little bit less of a severe weather potential between those two slight risks. However, we could still see the threat of some severe thunderstorms up across the entirety of the high plains. Taking a look at our temperatures, mainly focusing on our temperatures widespread, you can see that we do have 90 temperatures, very widespread 90 temperatures. They are going to be mainly in the 80s. However, we could see some temperatures that could get into the low 90s, where we see a little of these light grays. However, in some more concentrated regions such as Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana, we could definitely see some temperatures that could get as high as 93 degrees into those mid 90s. So we definitely are expected to have quite a bit of summer temperatures still in the middle of fall across a very large portion of the United States. We are expected to see temperatures that could reach 90 and the upper 80s up across the entirety of the Central Plains into Minnesota, and as far east as parts of western Texas and Mississippi, maybe even into Alabama. So we are definitely expected to have some very widespread, very hot temperatures, very summer-like temperatures in the middle of fall. However, again, as I did mention, I mentioned this the last couple of forecasts, and I didn't mention this on our weekly overlook. I did go more in depth on this on our weekly overlook, and if you want more information on what I'm about to tell you, please check out the weekly overlook. I go more in depth on it there. We are expected to have a major cold front blast through the eastern United States, which is going to significantly cool things down, which should get rid of a lot of these summer-like temperatures and should even push it below average. But then if we take a look at the western United States, you can see that we do have much colder temperatures because of the trough that is situated across the western United States, and some of the storms that we've been seeing are going to lead to a little bit of some cooler air. You can see that we are expected to see temperatures that could drop into the teens across some parts of Utah, Wyoming, in Colorado. However, these are most likely going to be mountaintops or very mountainous regions, very high up in the atmosphere. So these are really more realistic to the lower, more surface temperatures. These are likely going to be on mountain peaks. However, you can see very widespread overall. We are expected to have much colder temperatures, especially at night, because of the trough that we currently have situated across the western United States. However, as the cold blast does blast its way across the eastern United States, it should actually lead to a little bit of warming across the western United States, and should leave the western United States overall pretty unaffected from the trough that we see blast across the eastern United States. So we could see a little bit more warmer temperatures across the western United States, while we see a very significant plunge in temperatures across the eastern United States. Taking a look at our instability, focusing on the southern slight risk in the southern high plains first, you can see that we do have quite a bit of instability across eastern New Mexico. This is likely going to be because of the stronger dew points that we have across eastern New Mexico. We are expected to see Cape values that are going to be getting as high as the mid and low 3000s and widespread upper in mid 2000s across the southern slight risk. This is definitely going to lead to this is definitely going to aid and fuel our various threats in our severe thunderstorms across this region. And lead to a little bit more of a severe thunderstorm potential further down south. Again, where we had the stronger winds rounding the base of the trough. We are expected to definitely see the threat of large to very large hail, and I will be taking a look at our bulk shear to give you an idea of our shear for large to very large hail across this region compared to the northern slight risk, as well as the threat of a few tornadoes across this region and the threat of damaging winds. And if we take a look at the slight risk further north across western Nebraska, you can see that we do have significantly less instability as we did have significantly less moisture across this region. We are expected to see Cape values are going to be ranging anywhere from the triple digits into the mid 1000s, possibly getting as high as the low 2000s. Overall, this will lead to a less potential for severe thunderstorms. However, it should definitely be enough to fuel the threat of damaging winds and the threat of small to medium hail across this region. Taking a look at our bulk shear, focusing on our southern slight risk where we have the threat of large to very large hail with that hatched region, you can see that we are expected to have quite a bit of speed shear across the high plains because of the Rocky Mountains to the west and our orographic elongated hodographs. This is definitely going to lead to and support the threat of large to very large hail, especially in the southern slight risk. However, with some of the speed shear that we have across the Rockies, affecting across the Rockies because of the trough that is situated over the Rockies, we could definitely see orographic elongated hodographs extending the entire marginal threat to support the threat of some small to medium hail for the rest of the marginal threat. But further down south, where we have some of those stronger winds rounding the base of that trough, where we have again those stronger winds rounding the base of those trough, and then some of the weaker winds continuing up across the Rockies. We are expected to see a little bit more stronger winds and stronger shear across the southern slight risk, which will lead to overall a increased potential for hail in the southern slight risk and the threat of large to very large hail with this hatch region. But overall, we could see the threat of small to medium hail for this entire 5% hail threat, with a little bit more of a threat of large to very large hail for the southern slight risk. Taking a look at our energy helicity index, focusing on the 5% tornado threat for the southern slight risk, where we have a lot of that directional shear because of the base of that trough vecting across the southern Rockies into the southern high plains. That is going to lead to quite a bit of directional shear across the southern high plains, more so in the southern high plains. We aren't really expected to see any directional shear up across the rest of the Rockies. Wherever you're seeing these other energy helicity index readings, this may be a little bit of weak directional shear because of some of the mountains aiding with the directional shear. However, we are expected to have a little bit more zonal flow up towards the northern part of that trough. However, towards the southern part of that trough, with the southern slight risk across eastern New Mexico, where we have those winds rounding the base of the trough, we are expected to have quite a bit of directional shear because of that, and should support a 5% tornado threat. We are expected to have energy helicity index readings that are going to be getting as high as 2.6. which is definitely going to be indicative and supportive of our 5% tornado threat, and we could definitely see the threat of a few tornadoes across this region. So definitely make sure you're watching for that if you live across the this region. Some of the Rockies out to the west could also help with our directional shear, as the trough has a little bit of mountains to interact with, which will help with our directional shear and help with our 5% tornado threat. So we are definitely expected to have the directional shear to support our 5% tornado threat, and we are definitely expected to have the instability to support it as well. So we could definitely see the threat of a few tornadoes across this region. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator. Enjoy the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. If you live in any of the areas that I covered before today, please stay weather alert for the time being, and hopefully I will be able to see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.